Okay, now we're moving on to TI. TI number 1 is absent tension. Now this was originally called flat cheeks, and I don't want to use flat cheeks anymore because some TI users have high cheekbones, and this is different from high cheekbones. But I mean, high cheekbones helps in masking this cue, and also low cheekbones helps confuse it. So it's anatomy again gets in the way of this. But all things being equal, so if you had two people with the same cheekbone anatomy and just one was FI and one was TI, you'd see that the TI one has less toning here. And the less toning there is because FI has a constant micro pulling, a constant micro activation of the emotive expression of the face, whereas TI doesn't have that on by default. So as a result, over the years, like the tone of the cheeks, especially again the ones that we're talking about here, going up here and down here, the tone of those cheeks is just gone because they're not constantly on. I mean, sure, I can actually activate them, like if I try, but they're not on all the time. And so that makes this a looser area. And also, like, there's this kind of triangular area around here that's just generally usually just chill. There's nothing going on necessarily. So TI2 is delicate pinching. This is a little bit misleading because anybody can pinch their fingers. By the way, the delicate pinching refers to this, but there's more nuance to it. This has a margin of error because obviously anybody can pinch, and it's a little bit more related to JI in general, but it's more specifically a TI signal because, so here I'm going to try to demonstrate it, because TI being tied to the linguistic expression of FE and also being a dispassionate essentialist function makes it so that it has to make grammatical, precise differentiations between information that don't rely on their vibrational sense from within. So when they're trying to talk, TI is trying to create an in itself definition that works kind of universally, and it's not seeking for what is the best way I can say what I feel. No, it's like, what is the best way I can say something in general in a kind of a textbook fashion. It's almost as though TI is trying to write a textbook when it's being channeled out of FE. And so the fingers withdraw. That's really what they're doing. Like, so the wrists of TI kind of tend to sag, and the fingers tend to have a quality has finesse to it. And that's actually a shrinking away. It's part of how JI has a receding energy. The receding energy is a withdrawal from the world. So this tentative contact with reality, almost like you're almost just flooding away from it, is receding energy. So the hands being delicately touching, just barely tiptoeing, is part of the delicate energy of and a disengagement from the objects that are characteristic of JI. But it's a very precise disengagement because JI has a diagnostic quality that looks very carefully at micro judgments within the data. So the fingers reflect this. They recede, which means they bend here and they bend at the fingers, but they also pinch as if trying to grasp. I don't know why, from an evolutionary standpoint, this happens, but I think the grasping relates to the judgment functions in general. So there's a delicate grasping. Basically, that's JI. So there's this JI delicate grasping of like precisely what you want to look for in a kind of narrowed concept. TI3 is emotional neutralization. This is actually a variant of JI disengaging eyes. So disengaging eyes is like this, right? And when a TI user disengages down, the emotion on the face also completely flatlines. So this is about emotional neutralization. So like that. There's just like the emotive expression just falls away for that moment. It might pick up right afterwards, but in that moment, it just kind of, it's like, let me think about this. Let me just disconnect from the environment. Let me disconnect also from my own subjectivity to some degree. There are levels to the subjectivity. There's the emotive subjectivity, but then there's the introspective aspect, which is still kept. But the emotional register is kind of put aside for a moment, and things are analyzed kind of from a third person perspective. And that causes the neutralization. So if somebody's emotional expression neutralizes when they're going in, that's TI. The opposite happens with FI. With FI, when they use JI, they go in to evaluate something using JI, they actually kind of start to bubble up. They start to get really affected. So that's a way to distinguish the two. TI4 is stop-start articulation. And what this basically is the back and forth that happens between TI and FE due to FE having both of the animated aspects and TI having both of the inanimate aspects. What I mean by this is extroversion is given to FE, and the connection to the emotional register is given to FE, and introversion is given to TI, and dissociation is given to TI. So it's twofold and twofold. Like with the opposite pairing, TE and FI, TE is dispassionate, yet it's proactive. So like the proactivity of TE kind of gives it a little bit more animation. And FI, although it's receding as an introverted function, FI still has animation in the sense of its emotional radiation. But that's not true. So what happens with a TI-FE user is as they oscillate between their oscillation pair, they go from expressing to flatlining, expressing to flatlining. And there's this, you see in Barack Obama all the time, where he just like, he pauses, and then he goes, and he pauses, and he goes, and he pauses. And they can be fairly consistent. There doesn't have to be a big gap. Like the pause doesn't have to be long. Like if you look at my expression in this video, you'll see that I'm constantly doing this motion. But even though the spans between one gesture and the next might only be a second or so, but you can see the go and deflate, go and deflate, go and deflate. And I'll get more into that with the FE section. TI5 is fatigue demeanor. Now, this one doesn't show up very much. It's actually not something that happens unless somebody's a really hardcore TI user. And what this is this is the kind of lifeless energy that TI can give this person if it's at an extreme. So fatigue demeanor is basically like this, and there's almost no effort to talk because I'm neutralizing so hard that I talk 10 words per minute because I'm thinking about things for so long to get that precision that that's as far as I want to go. If I go any faster, I'm going to lose accuracy. Okay, you saw that? Okay, that's TI's fatigue demeanor. If you do see that, it's almost a clear sign that somebody's a TI lead. TI6 is puppeteer hands. So this is a variant of meticulous hands, which is a JI signal. So puppeteer hands are So they can take various forms, but again, going back to the way that Ji is an introverted function, so it's receding away energy from the world. It's almost just withdrawing away. It's tiptoeing at it. This is actually a gesticulation sign, so there's some crossover with JE, and what that means is that this usually happens with somebody who has some JE. If you don't have some JE, even if it's not at fully conscious levels, if you don't have some JE, this signal won't pop up because it's kind of that collaborative effort between FE and TI. And what this is doing is TI is making FE's gestures meticulous. So it looks like this, and it can go into pinching and it can go back down, and there's, how should I say, usually the fingers stretch out from this area out, and they clamp at the tips right here, but the forms they can take can be very varied. But the fingers always look delicate, and I need to parse this out in contrast to FI. This isn't on the code, but in general, we've seen that with FI users, the kind of meticulousness that they have looks more like claw-like hands. So usually the wrists are a little bit more stiff, but the fingers do more of this motion. So like these are the kind of hands that an FI user might have. They're more, I don't know, bear-like. And if they do bend at the wrist, they don't do this. So these are more like TI hands, right? Like these spidery hands. Some of this can be in FI, but mostly they're kept at more grasping and internal structure, even if the wrists are bent. It's a subtle difference, but I think so far it's been pretty consistent. TI7 is technical glitching, and what this basically is that meticulous quality of speech that I mentioned, but with, I don't want to say a stutter, but there's kind of you see Obama do this a lot. You know, he's actually called a stutter, where the technical glitching actually causes a glitching of the language because the effort is to try to get every word out precisely, and there's an error level that TI notices as the words don't fit all the variables of the situation. So precision, perfection is what TI is going for. Perfection in framing and formulation of data, and according to their personal aesthetic, symmetric sense of consistency, whatever that is, personal to them, even though they want it to be universal. But if they don't sense that, they kind of backtrack, or they error correct. So there's a lot of overlap with disclaimers, but also literally just pausing and stuttering that happens with the speech, and that sort of pausing, like and wanting to get just the right words out at the right time. TI8 is PE momentum clamping. So if TI6 puppeteer hands was a show of how TI affects FE's gesticulations by making them meticulous, then this signal is about how TI transforms PE when PE is trying to go too fast. Usually you see this most clearly in PE leads who are trying to use their auxiliary TI, but you can also see this in TI leads that are conscious in PE. So this is a revisor signal, and what it is like there's a PE wants to go, just kind of go, but TI won't won't let it go that fast because it's making errors as it goes that fast. So it's like hold on, slow down, kind of like pulling the horse back. And that pulling the horse back is where you see TI clamping the momentum of PE. And actually you just saw it, I did some of this even in giving the signal out. legitimately, because I was being too expedient with my metaphors, and I could see that I was losing precision as things were happening. So Ti says, "Give me back that precision. Let me slow you down. Give me that extra quarter of a second to put that together before I spew nonsense." And that quarter of a second is valuable time for Ti to make several processing loops and then give out the right output. So Ti9 is passive FE articulation. And basically what this is the quality of the voice of Ti when it has the warmth of FE, but it lacks the impact of FE. This is not the voice I'm using right now, because I'm using a lot of FE in this voice. But in general, the Ti's passive FE articulation sounds like this. There's still warmth in it, but there's a deflation. So there's a carefulness and there's a level of relaxation, but there's also, it's different than FI's sprite-like voice. It's not sprite-like. It's still, you can almost say it's still courteous, or at least it's still earnest in some way, but it's not trying to be persuasive, but it's not leaking out emotion like FI either. It's somewhat of an intermediate voice. You hear this a lot with Noam Chomsky and people like that who have FE conscious, but they are not trying to exaggerate its use. It's a little step above the fatigue demeanor signal. Sometimes it's used in conjunction. So that this voice has this soft, relaxed quality. It almost fades after every syllable, but it doesn't necessarily vanish all the way. And lastly is TI10, which is placid smiles. And this is an adaptive FE signal. And so for Ti, placid smile has to also do with the emotional expression being subordinate, or subject to higher Ti. So with Ti, you start out with a neutralized face because there's a disconnect from the emotional register, so the face is more or less always at some level stoic, dispassionate. And the emotive expression has to overcome that dispassion. And sometimes it doesn't fully do it, so it rises out from the bottom up, trying to fight against a curtain that's pulling down. So there's two dynamics going on. There's a flatness of the face, and then additive. It's an additive emotion. It doesn't leak out from within like FI. It's like so it's placid. It's some TI users might feel that it's put on as a show, depending on how they feel about their FE. If they're more connected to their FE, they can feel it as an authentic expression. But it can also be used just as a way of moving the social environment into a more pleasing dynamic for them. This is different than just smiling out of courtesy. Everybody smiles out of courtesy, FI users, but with TI you can. This is a voltology sign. You can see the shape. It's like it's wider here, and there's a curtain effect to the sides, but there's a flatness here. So that's what it looks like as a signal, and that's all the TI signals.